Hi again, everyone, and welcome to the Dietitian Against Diets podcast show. I am your guest, Rashonda Thornton. I am excited to introduce you to my friend, Ryan Andrews. He has a unique approach to nutrition and really has taken it a step further and really looking at more on ecosystem level and why we need to take care of our planet. This is information I think we all need. I think it gives us the ability to figure out what can we do to kind of help create change in our world. Before we do that, I want to bring along my play to win moments, these little snippets I do before every show to give you something to think about because I want the best for you when it comes to your health and how you take care of yourself. So when it comes to nutrition, when we make our changes in our eating habits, we jump on a diet or we, run to the first gym. Have you ever asked yourself, do you make changes out of fear or out of love? And the reason why I say do you make changes out of fear, because sometimes we have to be nudged or pushed to make those changes, and instead of actually having other reasons to do it besides feeling like if we don't do it now, our health is going to decline. If we don't do it now, we're not going to meet our health goals. If we don't do it now, we're going to end up in the same position we were 2 or 3 years ago. So sometimes we feel that anxiety and that pressure to make these changes quick and follow the next plan, or, there's a new diet that I'm going to try it now because that's going to promise change. But a lot of times that motivation or what's behind the reason to change, most of the time is out of fear. And when I say fear, as you know, fear itself is not even enough because sometimes we feel scared and we feel pressure to do it versus us just wanting to do it. So I actually had a conversation with a gentleman, and he said something that made a lot of sense. So many times you see tabloids, you see numbers, and you see statistics about how, our health epidemic, our obesity epidemic, how it's just growing, and then just how our health is declining. Or even when you go to a doctor's office, he or she is telling you your cholesterol levels are going up, your diabetes numbers are going up. You're hearing all these things. And then the next stage is you got to start eating healthier. And even if you're presenting with all of these issues, you still don't make that change. So sometimes fear doesn't even work. So scaring someone into trying to eat healthy or scaring yourself into making healthy choices, fear actually doesn't really do a good job because you may start, you may get going, and then you start kind of falling back into your old habits, or you start kicking the can. But at the end of the day, you end up not really moving far. So when it comes to making changes, at the end of the day, changes can't be made out of fear. So perhaps there's another reason behind why you're making your changes. I always say, instead of making changes out of fear of our health, fear of what we're going to look like in a mirror, let's start making changes out of love. And the point of that is making changes out of love for yourself. Because when you start looking at why you're making your changes, you don't make a change so you can make sure that you lose weight or make sure that you fit into a particular size. You make changes because you just want to show the love that you have for yourself. So what does that mean and what does it look like? Well, the anxiety is gone, the stress is gone, feeling like you have to be structured and you have to you have to check every box. That all is lifted off your shoulders because now you're making choices because you care about yourself. So what I mean by that, if you joined the gym and you've got this great workout that you're excited to do, don't work out because you're scared that you're going to build body fat or lose your muscle tissue. Work out because you care for yourself, because you love for yourself. You know your body's supposed to move, it's supposed to work. You're building your body, and that's actually showing the love that you have for yourself. So instead of, opt for a salad, opt for your fruit, opt for, plant-based eating, or opt for lean meats, not because fear that you're going to increase your cholesterol or fear that if you eat one or two more bites, your pants are going to feel tighter. No, start making new choices because you want to eat this apple, this salad, these lean meats because you want to provide your body with the best. You want to give your body the best. And the action of that is loving self. So start thinking about how can you start projecting, how can you start illustrating how you care about yourself, how you feel about yourself through your food choices. And when you do that, it takes away all the pressure. You actually feel good every single time you make that choice because you know you're reflecting that self-care and that self-love. You've heard me say it so many different times about self-care and self-love. Well, we have to start making changes now out of love, out of self-care and self-love for ourselves. And when we do that, that brings upon positive thinking. It brings upon a better perspective and outlook on life. It actually overflows and starts influencing and encouraging others because they see that we're doing it now because we want to. And we also know the underlying reason because this is our way that we're showing that we love ourselves. This is our way that we're showing that we care for ourselves. So as you're moving along your day, you're making your choices now. Think about how and why you're making your choices. Are you making out of fear? Or are you making out of love? If you find that fear is a part of it, change the story, change the language, change your actions, and change your reasons. And your reason has to be just out of love for yourself. And when you do that, you will notice a significant difference in how you interact with food, how you interact with your body. Like, start loving yourself, but let your relationship with food be a reflection of just that. Again, this is great information for those who may not have thought about that perspective. And if you have never really thought about it or never made choice out of love, then this is the time to do so. I'm sure you have friends and families that struggle with these same issues we all have in some points of our lives, but now it's time to change that. So send this message, send this podcast on to someone that you know, even at that 5 or 10 minutes could mean something significant to their lives. It would be beneficial. Have them follow the Dietitian Against Diets podcast, and they'll actually hear a lot more as time moves on. So as we're getting ready to introduce you to my next guest, Ryan, I want to introduce you also to a particular company that has been along my side since day one. You've heard of it. You've seen it. It is a campaign from the Midwest Dairy Council, and the topic that we're going to talk about factor of food insecurity. It is amongst us constantly, and even if we don't realize it, especially now during the COVID crisis, so many families are doing without food or not having the nutrition that they need. A fun fact, maybe not that fun, but did you know that 1 out of every 3 critically ill adults do not have enough money for food, for medicine, or even both? That's huge. So this isn't just a moral problem, but it's also an ethical issue. Well, the dairy organization understands that, and by doing that, they have been teaming up with local food banks to ensure that milk, dairy products are all distributed to those in need. Learn more about, what Midwest Dairy stand for and what Undeniably stand for by going to their website and learn about what they're doing for the community right now. Go to their website at www.dairygood.org or follow them on Instagram at dairygood. I want to introduce you now to Ryan Andrews. Okay, so now we're going to do... Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Dietitian Against Diets podcast show. I'm your host, Rashonda Thornton. I would tell you it is so enjoyable to be able to run into people remotely even now that you find so many things in common with and have similar messaging, but do it in their own way. I want to introduce you to my podcast guest today, Ryan Andrews. But before I let him take the mic, I want to give you a little bit of interesting information about him. I would say this gentleman has really took the reins to, infusing himself in the wellness and fitness industry. He originally has a bachelor's degree in exercise science. He has 2 graduate degrees, one from Kent State in nutrition, as well as one in exercise physiology. So that doesn't mean he's also a registered dietitian. He's not only a registered dietitian, he's also a registered yoga teacher. So he has a lot of different holistic perspectives that he has under his belt, and he continues to do that. Last but not least, he's written a book back in the day, but it's very useful for now. It's called Drop the Fat, Act and Live Lean. I like that title. And he's, through his transitioning in his health journey, he has another book out. Actually, if you go to his website, you'll find it. It's called The Guide to Plant-Based Eating. So that gives you any insight on his perspective at where he is now, that hopefully that title will give you a little bit of a clue to it. So I want to just welcome you, Ryan, to the show today.
Yeah. Hey, Rashonda. I'm so excited to be here. It's nice to take some time and have this conversation about the world and food. And it's nice, especially in these times.
That is so true. I'm glad you said that because given the times, I think we now have the time to, without all the noise and distractions of products and marketing and events, and we have some time now to just think about our earth. Now, our health's connected to it, but, reconstructing the way we live, our food choices, and actually what we want for this world long term. So I really think that this conversation is very timely.
Yeah, how we eat influences so many things in the world. So yeah, I'm
Yeah.
excited to talk about it.
And I love that you from our conversations that we've had in the past. So Ryan and I have had the opportunity to talk behind the scenes to really get to know each other, because that only brings value to these conversations. But one thing that you spoke highly about was, first of all, I want to know kind of like what was your journey to get you. We anytime we make any endeavor in life, life is interesting because we start off with one idea, one route that we just are gung ho about taking, and then it just takes us somewhere else that we had no intentions, but we find that have fallen in love with it. And so, from hearing your story, that's kind of that's kind of the common thread I saw, and I think that relates to a lot of people because it shows them that we're always constantly changing and evolving. So give us a little bit of insight about, how you got into the field of dietetics when you first started, and just how it transpired to other wellness components, and then how it's turned it now into more on a macro level as far as, our ecosystem and our sustainability practices.
Yeah, I mean, my journey in nutrition and fitness and wellness started almost 25 years ago, and it started with me becoming a competitive bodybuilder. And
Really?
yeah, that was my gateway into the world. It was really essentially my life between the ages of 15 and 20.
And you know what? While you're talking about that, if you don't mind, if you can go back and what was your incentive when it came to I'm sure it's a totally different ballgame when you were that age and going into the bodybuilding world into where you're at now.
Yeah, well, I mean, at age 14, when I got my first barbell and discovered the world of strength training and bodybuilding, I was not the best student. I was kind of floundering in my life. And so looking back, it was a really good thing for me at the time because it gave me something to focus on and pursue. And it ended up teaching me some of those kind of quote unquote life lessons about like grit and perseverance and goal setting and things like that. So I desperately needed that at the time. And I mean, specific to nutrition, my focus as a competitive bodybuilder was completely physique oriented. So it's interesting to think back to that time because it's like 180 degrees from that period of my life. So when I would sit down to look at a meal, it was, how can this meal benefit my physique? And like, that was the end of the thought.
Yeah.
It was
the
like,
formula.
what's this going to do for my body composition? And over the years, as I went to school and grad school and just experienced more things, I started to look at my plate differently. And it was more about, how can I create a meal that also considers bigger things? So farm worker welfare and animal welfare and the well-being of the planet. So these are things I definitely was not considering as a bodybuilder. Not that you can't, I just wasn't at the time. But yeah, I would say over the years, my perspective just continued to widen. So it was very narrow. It was focused on me, and then it kind of widened to consider other things.
And I like that you showed that, even I know we're not done with that conversation, but just that just a time frame of like the way you looked at food as just a substance to this, the means to an end, right? And then you start learning about nutrition and food. Then you looked at it as it's a means to your body, your health was a means to an end. Which that's great. That's our goal as dietitians, to get people, just get them there, right? But then you took it a step further, and how can a means to end can go beyond you? Can it go, more to the agricultural industry, more to the health of our earth and our environment? I just think that is something that, I think you have to have that middle part, in my opinion, to appreciate that third part, on a larger scale. So I'm kind of glad you kind of gave that visual, because I don't think that people recognize these parts have to be in place to actually be able to really appreciate the next step.
Right. And I think when I talk to some people about these topics and they think, oh gosh, sitting down to a meal and thinking about what I can eat to benefit all these big things seems like this crippling pressure. But I actually think as human beings, we tend to thrive when we're doing things for the greater good, whether it's doing something for our family or for friends or for the community. I think those are the opportunities when we really can like see transformation in the self or of the self. So for some, they say, yeah, it's a crippling pressure. I think it can be pretty empowering and lead to big life transformations.
I like that.
Yeah.
Very true, very true. And so, from you taking those stair steps, I'm sure when you're a bodybuilder, you wasn't thinking about the cows and the farming and the agriculture, and wasn't it's expected when you're 14, but just the fact that it was a gateway, it may have played a small role, but it played a part of the role in your transformation in your thought processes. And so now, since you're on the other end of that spectrum, what are your efforts towards helping people to recognize the benefits or how they can help, or the importance of what is it that you're wanting people to start to see differently when it comes to sustainability practices?
Yeah, well, I should say I did start at 14, but it was up until age 20, so I had less of an excuse the older I got. I was getting older. But yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing if I'm working with clients or teaching or writing or whatever I'm doing right now, it's getting people connected to food, I would say, and getting people to think about how we produce food and getting people to think about the entire food system. So the farmers who are taking the time and energy to grow the food or raise the food, and if it's animals, how are the animals being treated? What are the repercussions on the planet, soil, water, air, all of these things. I think, I mentioned farmers, any workers along the food chain as well. There are all these steps involved getting food to our plate. And as eaters, we can select different things that help to shape a different food system. Not that it's completely up to us. I mean, there's a path that's shaped in this country that doesn't make it easy to always select the most sustainable choice, the most nutritious choice. So we need all sorts of changes. We need top down from government. We need schools and hospitals and health professionals like dietitians and eaters. We need everybody to work towards these changes. But when I'm working with somebody and getting them to think about their eating, I want them to think about their own health. Obviously, that's a huge part of a sustainable food system is healthy people, but also just all these other components, because I think it gives people a little bit more incentive too. If somebody's like, I don't want health. Okay, I'm not really into that. I'm young. I'm healthy now. Well, then think about food for all of these other factors. That can be pretty powerful.
And again, I like the idea. We're I think in our heart, I think there was this, I actually watched this TED Talk that people get adrenaline, they get happy when they're helping others. So sometimes that can be an incentive in a way, like how to help move changes. If when people recognize that they're doing it for the greater good, it may be more likely to make those next steps. So if someone were interested in making those next steps, everyone comes from different dynamics, different regions, different socioeconomic, different levels of education, different amounts of exposure, different interests. So what would be your, what would be your, I guess, way of helping people to figure out where they best can be a part of it?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple ways. One would be having a conversation with them, listening to them and just chatting with them about it. But my kind of more general recommendations revolve around 3 kind of big changes and then 2 other smaller changes. But I mean, one big thing we can all think about and do to create a more sustainable food system is to try to find our minimal effective dose of animal products. And I say that for people who know me in the field, you kind of get boxed in sometimes as the plant-based guy or the vegetarian guy. I really don't love labels that much because I feel like labels can have baggage, and it doesn't always allow for some of those things you mentioned a few minutes ago, like cultural considerations and budget considerations and all these other things we have to juggle as eaters. So I definitely don't say that we all need to adopt a vegetarian diet and that would solve all the Earth's problems. Not by any stretch. I actually think there's some downsides to if everybody's tomorrow switched to a vegetarian diet for a sustainable food system. But in America, we tend to really overemphasize animal products in the diet. So if we could just work to find a more effective dose that allows us to be healthy and feel good, I think that's one big thing we can do as eaters. Another big thing we can do as eaters is pay attention to any kind of food waste that we're involved with, whether that's at home and we throw away leftovers, or as shoppers and being really, really picky with ugly produce. There are all sorts of things we can do as eaters to minimize our waste. And the third one is, whenever possible, if that's once a year, great. If that's every trip, great. Supporting for doing things a little bit more sustainably in kind of a relative fashion. So those are like the three big things I think people can think about and do in their own lives to encourage a more sustainable food system.
Yeah, and I like that the wastage part. I think that it's just unconsciously people, buy products. Think about buying things in bulk. Obviously it's the money, it's the per pound, per ounce, per unit cost factors what people are considering. But are you diversifying where you're using that food, or are you using it up enough, or are you using that food to share with others? I think, as Americans, I would just kind of stay on the Western civilization. We're just used to having an abundance. And so we take it for, obviously, that we take it for granted. How can we, make our food stretch, and still maintain the nutritional benefits of it, but do it because we're trying to prevent overage of food waste. I actually work with, you may have heard of it, the company Imperfect Foods. Or have you heard of Imperfect
sounds
Foods?
familiar.
Yeah, so
sounds familiar.
it's similar. Like, it's an organization, and basically they have become the middleman with farmers and distributors. And what they do is they gather all the imperfect looking fruits and vegetables, because if the nutrients are still there, they still taste the same, but they don't go out to the commercial, to the grocery stores. They don't go out because they don't look well and people may not buy them. So they found that there was a gap there, and there was a surplus of food that just was ready and available for people that's just as good. And so it's a company from California called Imperfect Foods, and they label it Imperfect Foods, and it has really created a new ecosystem because they glean all those produce and those products and are able to sell it for a little bit of a discounted price and get it out to the community. So things like that makes me, see that, when I hear you tell, your perspective and what is it you're looking to do, like when I hear companies that are working towards that, it's also making an influence and impact on people on a larger scale, to where, the apple doesn't have to be completely shiny and perfectly red to be healthy for you. We can look beyond it and not waste food because of that,
Yeah. We all kind of become like a pretentious Martha Stewart when we're shopping for produce. We like inspect every last square inch and discard the one with the tiny blemish. But yeah, I mean, it took water to grow the food. It took energy to grow the food. And then if we just throw the food away, we're wasting those resources, and then we're sending it to the landfill where it can break down and release other emissions. So yeah, it's like a double whammy. So yeah, I think any organization and company that's taking steps to remedy that's a positive thing right now.
Yeah. So I have a question for you. You mentioned, we talking about the food wastage. Well, let's talk about the other side when we receive the foods. A lot, I don't want to say it's a trend, and I hope it isn't a trend. I hope it's just an ongoing awareness and intentional choice to make. It's really a drive towards, supporting the local farms, getting your fruits and vegetables for somewhere in your remote location. Everywhere from grocery stores to restaurants. I've never seen so many farmers markets in my life within the last 7 years. And so there it seems like it'd be a big drive to create that type of ecosystem within your community. So how do you feel that has impacted the overarching way that we used to get food by importing? Do you feel like that is one of the first steps to kind of help on a community level to like start supporting, your local farmers and producers?
I think it's a big step. And I mean, given the current situation with the pandemic, I think some people really argue that decentralizing our food system and having regions or states be more self-sufficient would be probably a good thing, because right now everything is so concentrated and consolidated and centralized that if one thing goes wrong in the system, like everything's broken downstream. So it would, I think, generally be nice for a more sustainable food system to have that decentralization. You potentially could create jobs in those regions, in those states. You might be able to grow foods that are better suited to the climate in those regions. Potentially, that's going to lead to better overall nutritional intake. So I think it's a big one. I mean, I think there are some benefits as well to importing food. I mean, you get more variety and you're exposed to foods you might not be able to grow in your area and things like that, which can be nice. But it's a big one. I think if we don't address it at all, we're going to really struggle moving forward. So yeah, I agree. It's something we need to address for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think this pandemic has just really opened up the soft spots that has been settling in our systems in different outside of food too. But just like if we just keep it on just our ability to get certain our foods, it's really opened up like how can we prepare ourselves to where if something like this were to happen, we're able to survive on our own. You know, I'm seeing so many people, you know, starting to get their garden, you know, starting to learn how to make their own fruits and vegetables. They're getting closer connected to where their food comes from. And to me, that's the silver lining that people are recognizing, hey, we can kind of go backwards in the way we used to live and really start using our land, which makes you more appreciative of that food and more appreciative of just the system within itself. So I personally think it's, you know, how can we use this particular moment of our lives as an opportunity to reflect on some things that are super important, you know?
Yeah.
And obviously,
Ron Finley, a gardener in California, says growing your own food is like printing your own money. So it's you can save money. It's self-sufficient. It's a positive thing for the most part.
yeah. So it sounds to me like a couple of ways that people can start is, supporting those surrounding them as far as the local farmers, but also learning how to do agriculture, or even creating like a communal like gardening or something if they don't have the space. I know they're doing a lot of urban farming is something that's been pretty popular here in St. Louis, where they have gardens on top of roofs. And I mean, they're getting really innovative. And I think, and one good thing, to me, like when you live in a city, you're not surrounded by farms. You're not surrounded by farmland, but being introduced and exposed to it, even in a different way, is still a way to kind of keep the ball rolling and keep that whole human component of us where, that's what we grew up farming, and keeping that going. I think that's super important.
Yeah, people are living in cities, and so it doesn't look like people are going to just spread out and live by farms again anytime soon. So if we have things like urban gardens and we have people who can raise awareness and educate and get people connected to food that way, 2 thumbs up. I'm in favor of it.
I think it's becoming it's a slow wave, but I think there's starting to kind of be a tide of, more awareness, and people are really from their hearts, not doing it. I mean, there is a fear component, obviously right now, but, outside of just doing it for survival purposes, doing it for the bigger picture, right? And so I think that's the goal, is to help people to be prepared for times like this, but still do it, because that's just how we keep our planet healthy and kind of keep the system going. So I think like those are the low hanging fruits, would be my opinion. It's just learning how to garden, getting comfortable with it, and then supporting those local people, or local companies and farmers around you. And so like, what are some of the other like areas that would be great to be highlighted on that people may overlook or take for granted?
Those are some of the big ones. I think eating a diverse diet, so kind of increasing the variety of foods you eat, can be a beneficial thing, because when farmers are able to really grow a wide variety of plants, that can be a really good thing for soil health and a really good thing for pollinators. And when you're looking at our own health and disease risk as well, we tend to have a very limited diet, only a handful of vegetables and whole grains and fruits and things like that. So a wide variety of food, I think, can be a win-win, good for us, good for the planet. And then checking in with the amount of packaging on our foods as well is kind of one I like to throw in there as well, because most people see food at the grocery store and it's dressed up really well in different types of plastics and papers and things like that. And that might be your only option, but if there's any way you can kind of lessen that, I think that's another good thing, because that's a big part of what's heading to landfills as well as food packaging waste.
Yeah, it's just so many different like parts of the pipeline that's steadily getting stopped up, and at some point, it's not going to be a pretty ending when everything starts, starting to kind of build up. And again, if it's not in our face because it's taken away, we don't see the impact of it. So I think it's important that, especially I feel like the generations behind us are the ones that obviously is going to be who makes those decisions. So like really instilling that into the youth, I think is important. Is that something that you have found an area where you find it, have you pursued that area, found that would be an area of benefit moving forward?
Oh, yes. I think I'm putting a lot of hope in younger people these days. So I've worked with middle schoolers over the past few years and done a lot of teaching in how to cook meals that are healthier for you, healthier for the planet. And I've also been teaching at Purchase College, teaching students about the food system. So I've been spending most of my time with middle school age to college age. And they definitely have an energy and enthusiasm that I need, especially in these times. So I benefit from working with them as well. And the more this can just become normal and habitual for them, it doesn't have to be like, I'm going to take this sustainable path that's outside the comfortable path. It just becomes the normal path. The normal path is the healthiest, most sustainable thing for them.
Yeah, you want it to turn around. I will say this, and this is something I actually did this presentation the other day, and we talked about nutrition, food 101, and how it started with processing food, with processed food, foods with preservatives, just how it's not even, I don't even call it food anymore. A lot of it came from advertising and marketing, because, when we had accessibility to television and in ways of, it's just the influence, and with that, that's really what shifted society and how they ate. Think about TVs became TV dinners. We wouldn't have TV dinners without TVs, but you wouldn't have TV dinners without microwaves, so it all kind of plays into itself. And until, the late 70s or 80s, when research really started kind of as far as the health conditions, really starting to show the repercussions of these processed foods, the foods infused with high fructose corn syrup and just hydrogenated oil, and how our health became, the decrease of our health started to really come and be exposed. I think because of that, that's really helping. That's after that, things are starting to become, people learning and standing up for wanting to eat more cleaner foods and trying to bypass, some of those chronic illnesses. And I feel like that has been the driving force to bringing us kind of full circle back to where we are actually being more conscious of what we're eating and wanting foods that are natural and not just going by the label that says pure and light and assuming that means healthy, kind of digging a little bit deeper. I feel like that's the driver, but I feel like for me, that opens the pathway of now learning, being a little bit more inquisitive about, okay, I'm appreciating this food. I want this healthy food. Where do I go get it? Or how can I make sure, I know where my food is coming from? Or how can I connect with and develop a level of respect for the people that are working hard to make sure that food is there for you? It's like the farmers work behind the curtains and all you see is refrigeration and, the fruit stands. You don't see all the work that's done behind it. But I feel like now that people are more open to listening now, and unfortunately health was a driver of them wanting to start turning their ears to, okay, we need to start turning things around. But I think it's making an easier pathway for people to start looking more at, animal care and how, how the land is being recycled and the water is so many different things. I think that's, to me, I feel like there's some positivity that's starting to come. There is a way way forward, because people are starting to really kind of care more. And I think that's what's needed.
Yes, the advertising. Hearing you talk about that, I'm just nodding my head. We're part of the largest psychology experiment ever devised, and it's going very well according to the food companies. So, yeah, I mean that's how most people are learning about foods and being exposed to foods. I think it's shifting a little bit with things like social media, but yeah, that's food education for most people, is commercials and advertising.
Very true. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about, how are you want, so this is your new, like, not new, but as your growth, this is your growth, right? You're growing into, like, getting into a larger realm where you kind of want to tackle it on a larger scale. Like, what does that look like for you in regards to your future?
Oh, whoa, these are big questions. Good for me to reflect upon. If I had to kind of boil down my mission, it's really getting people connected to food and creating a more sustainable food system. So I'm happy to do that in whatever way I can. And right now it's a lot of writing and speaking and teaching.
Okay.
I really enjoy doing that. Hopefully other people enjoy me doing that in the world. I feel like at this point, if I really want to go deep into this part of nutrition, I'll probably need to get some sort of a credential, whether it's another master's degree or a PhD in sustainable food systems. So that's been on my mind more lately. Mm-hmm. I go back and forth though, because that's kind of my natural comfortable place, is the academics and learning and research. But I also know that I don't want to forget about the real world and what people are actually doing every day. So I want to make sure not lose that. I want to bridge the gap between the two. Okay. So I feel like sometimes if I go back to school, it's just going to put me further away from what's actually happening in the real world. So that has me a little bit scared sometimes. But as long as I can be reaching people in kind of an engaging, informative, entertaining way and raising awareness, I'd be happy with that.
And you know what? Sometimes it's the role that you play within that, within that path. Even having a coalition with some people that are already within those webs, where you, like, say, you can bridge that gap and be the ambassador, with lack of better words, ambassador or liaison, so where you're able to kind of bridge that education or that language or that perspective, or bend their influence to where they see it and be able to, that's how you keep the train rolling. Sometimes you go too far left or too far right, that gray area gets wider and wider and makes more of a disconnect than a connect. But I feel like, you're on a great start. You have your book called The Guide to Plant-Based Living. And I think people see that and they, tell us a little bit about that book and how you feel like it would be a great guide for people that are wanting to consider or even know what plant-based living is.
It's, so I wrote the book and I had a couple of things in mind as I was writing it. I wanted it to be for people who are already eating this way and living this way, and how I wanted to help them be able to troubleshoot it a bit.
Okay.
But I also wanted it to be a welcoming book for people who are not ever interested in identifying as a plant-based eater or a vegetarian eater, and just looking to learn more about incorporating 1 or 2 plant-based meals per week, and how to do that in a way that's nutritious and tasty and fits into their lifestyle. So I hope it's a book that doesn't feel limiting to anybody, really. I hope anybody can read it and get a few laughs and get some good information and some meal ideas. And whether that's 1 new plant-based meal per week or that's the whole lifestyle, either way, I hope people will benefit from it.
Yeah, so it seems like it's not too heavy. And you said laugh, so there's some moments where people there's some funny parts to it, which is, to me,
bad jokes, a lot of bad jokes. Yeah.
Well, those are the best jokes, because you laugh at it because they're bad.
Right.
But I mean, that to me, we all know those are icebreakers, right? And that helps people to it brings a connection. If you can laugh together, then you can talk together, then you can listen together, right? And so making it to where it's not too, stilted or black and white, to where it's what's the word, when digestible, and that people can use it to help guide them, or even communicate that to someone else that they know that's interested in learning about plant-based living and not really ready for that conversation. Don't know, they're dependent on social media to help them figure it out. It sounds like it'd be a great tool for someone for themselves and also someone they can pass along to other people. So I think just the title of it is just a guide, right? So you're not telling people, you're just kind of help them along the way. And I think that's a great way to at least start bridging that gap. And I'm sure I can only assume that you have some pieces of there in there talking about, sustainability practices and, the whole food system. And I'm sure that I wouldn't be surprised if that's a part of it, but I think it's needed, right?
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Thanks for the feedback. You're making it sound maybe better than it is, but no.
Well, I guess those who are which listener reading or watching have to go and check it out.
Yeah.
So as we're getting ready to close up, I just have one or two more questions for you. I always ask people, especially entrepreneurs and people that are exploring their skill and their passion, and that takes a lot of bravery, but I think it's the most fulfilling thing in life that you can do. So through your path, what is one moment where I always say, what made your heart, what was the moment where your heart just sung, that just showed you that everything you're doing means something and is worth something?
I've had I've had a few of those moments, I think, over the years. I remember, one of them actually during my dietetic internship, where I was in this group support meeting for people getting ready to have bariatric surgery. Mm-hmm. And this young girl was talking about just how difficult it was to have a healthy, good, safe, good relationship with food. And it was so sad. And I remember hearing her and just thinking, gosh, I want to help people have a better relationship with food. So that was one moment kind of earlier in my life and my career. And then later on in my life, it's really kind of like a slower burning kind of cumulative one of seeing all the things happening in the world with injustices to people working in the food chain, to animals, and to how we treat our planet. It just feels like you can I feel like I can see the bridge is out up ahead, and I need to tell everybody, hey, the bridge is out up ahead, turn around. So
stop.
Yeah, those are probably two of kind of the ones that come to mind, ones that cumulative one, and one is just early on in that group session. But those felt like I need to take this on and do something about it.
That's called passion. That's called, passion and compassion, being compassionate, because you see, that we're going, I forgot how they say it, but I'm never good at re-saying these old sayings, but going nowhere faster, like you've seen, the burning building, and you see us walking straight towards it, and you're just doing your best to give us a moment to pause and rethink our approach to things. So I'm glad that there are, people like yourself that are just out there that really wants to give people a larger perspective on life, but utilizing in a way of, focusing on their self personally as far as their health, but also their environment. And I think that's great. Some people don't see that, and we need more people like you to be a part of that story. So as we're getting ready to close, all right, I want to give an opportunity for anyone that's listening or watching and is inquisitive about, getting in contact with you or having some conversation with you or asking some questions or, even working with you on some level. How can people contact and find you and learn more?
Yeah, check out RyanDAndrews.com. D as in Dexter. It's my middle name. From there, you can check me out on social media. I post on social media maybe on average once a month. I'm still trying to figure out social media in terms of how it influences my own mental well-being and how comfortable I am in the world. So, I'll be on there occasionally. So head to the website, and if you want to connect with me on social, you can find the links there as well.
Okay, great. Well, it's a pleasure speaking with you again at these conversations. I love talking to other people in my field because everyone comes at a different angle, And I think that's so great because the more we have conversations like this and be able to collide, the more beautiful things can come out of it that can help other people. So I'm great to have this mixture of healthy living with you on this platform today. And for those who are wanting to reach out to Ryan D. Andrews, make sure you put in the D. You can find him on his website, follow him on Instagram when he posts. But I'm sure he has a lot more going on that can be beneficial to you outside of what you see. So please look him up and learn, get his book. He has it. Go to his website. You'll find a guide to plant-based living, and take that as your next step if you want to figure out how you can live that type of life. Once again, as always, as you have known, as you've been watching these podcast shows, I am the dietitian against diets, but it's never about the diet. It's about the diet mentality. So continue to learn more about your health, your nutrition, your journey, connect with food on a different level. And learn that you are a part of what you eat in a way that's self-caring and self-loving. Take care, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye-bye. Well, I hope that you enjoyed that conversation. It's always great to hear other dietitians that have completely different way that they took their nutrition, their profession, and really learn their why reason behind it and what they're doing for the community. Ryan was a great guest. As we're closing, talking about food and talking about wastage and how can we kind of create a sustainable environment, there's a particular company out there that's doing just that. It's called Imperfect Foods. Now, with Imperfect Foods, one thing for us as consumers, this company allows you to save time, money, and you're also contributing to the world because you're saving food waste. So what they do, they are this middleman between the farmers and the grocery stores. There are some foods that are considered not the prettiest, and so they don't make it to the grocery stores. But just because they're not the prettiest doesn't mean that they still don't have that nutrition that we need. So what does Imperfect Food do? They come in the middle and they bring those high quality foods and they sell them online. They sell them online at a more economic price, and it allows you to still purchase the same types of food. It just may not be the shiny red apple, maybe a little bit different. The apple may be a little different from the other, but it still has the same nutrients. They are really starting to make a dent in the community and finding that place to where they're not letting all this good, healthy food go to waste. So go to their website and see how you can get some of their products. I guarantee you it will all taste the same, if not better. Just may not look that way. But if you go online right now, as a matter of fact, you can go and get $10 off your first purchase by typing in Reshanda. That's RESHAUNDA. Learn more about their company, what it stands for, how they're making a huge impact into this world, and learn how you can contribute by being a part of that movement. Thank you guys. I hope you had a great show. Talk to you next time.